Fakes a return pass, but instead gives the ball to number 8.
That's where you fell into a trap.
What is good, everybody out there? Thanks again for checking into another episode of Court Thoughts, the channel where we basically talk basketball. On this episode of CT's Classroom, I'm going to be breaking down the fundamental differences as well as the pros and the cons when it comes to considering one motion versus two motion shooting. All right, let's get into it. Now, before I start to explain some of the key differences, there's a piece of terminology that I want to cover off. It's actually two pieces of terminology. The first is a shooter's pocket. Now, a shooter's pocket is, I guess, the terminology that I understand and how it was explained to me is where the ball is starting when you initiate your shooting motion. Okay. Now, traditionally, this is generally going to be in people's hip or belly region. And some basic sort of fundamental things that are explained to you when you're learning shooting mechanics is that you want the ball to be coming up in a straight line. Okay, you don't want the ball to be crossing across your body. You don't want the ball to be swinging in any sort of way. So they try to teach you to shoot the ball in a straight line. And in order to do that, you have to start in a straight line. So if you think about, when you kick a ball, if you're trying to curve it, you might curve your leg. And so if you're shooting and you're curving, then you're going to curve the ball. The ball's not going to have a straight flight. When we're thinking about the shooter's pocket, you really should be comfortable in being able to create a straight shot. So in being able to create a non-curving, lopsided shot from each part of your body. So we should be comfortable from shooting from our outside hip, our middle, and our inside hip. Now, when I'm saying inside and outside is the same side as your hand, right? Your shooting hand. So if you're right-handed, it's going to be your right side of your hip. So the inside, the outside, I'm referring to across your body. When you think about shooting from the outside of your hip, a perfect example of what that may look like as an initiating shot, you could look at some of the early clips of Lonzo Ball and how he used to shoot the ball across his body. Now, obviously, his finish was a little bit different, but that's basically what we're talking about, initiating the ball across your body and shooting them. Now, a really good example of seeing someone shoot from their hip and shooting from that dead center, you could look at someone like Ray Allen. Ray Allen had a beautiful, beautiful automatic jump shot. And he used to shoot very aligned. His shot used to start a little bit up higher, but you used to see that when he would dip down, the ball would literally dip with him, and then he would initiate that contact. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm explaining the shooter's pocket. The next thing that I want to explain is the set point. Now, the set point is basically where the ball is positioned in your body or near your body when your elbow is opening. Now, when we're thinking about shooting the ball, a couple of things that we need to understand is that your elbow is going to be in pretty much a 90-degree angle. Now, a lot of the time, this has actually been debunked, saying that, it doesn't have to be in a 90-degree angle. It doesn't have to be less or more. Whatever the case is, it's basically in this sort of position, right? Now, when we're shooting the ball, when I'm explaining the set point, it's where the ball is when it transitions from your shooter's pocket to the point where your elbow is going to open. Now, if I'm saying that they have a high set point, I'm saying that the ball has transitioned from their pocket, their center line, they've gone up to here, so their elbow is still in that sort of 90-degree angle, and then they start to initiate that open. A perfect example of someone that would shoot like that would be Tracy McGrady. Now, if you want to see more examples of how that would look like in a real life scenario, you can go ahead and check out the episode of Run It Back, where I break down his triple threat and post-up moves. He had a beautiful high release, and a lot of it had to do with his high set point. But anyways, let's start to explain some of the key differences about one motion and two motion shooting. The major difference that we see in a two motion versus a one motion shot is essentially the pause when the ball gets to the set point. So we've transitioned from a point where the ball is at our shooter's pocket. It then gets to the set point. As we're jumping, we reach the apex or the top of our jump, and that's generally the point when the ball is then released, because we should be releasing the ball at the top of our jump. At least how we're fundamentally taught when to learn, like when we're learning to shoot, we should be releasing the ball at the top of our jump. Now, when we think about the difference, if you were to take a side view of seeing someone with a two motion shot, you're going to see that the ball has a little bit more of a straight line to it. So the ball goes from the hip, goes to the set point, and then juts out and creates that shooting motion. Now, when we see a one motion shot, the line is far blurred between the set point and the actual release, the snapping of the wrist. You'll see it's much more of a curved motion. There's a number of benefits and there's also a number of downsides in regards to either a one motion or a two motion shot. And well, let's just get straight into it. Now let's focus on the one motion shot. One motion shot has actually started to become a little bit more of a commonality. It's not really something that was super common in seeing in the 90s or even the 2000s. It started to now become much more common as we see guys like LaMelo Ball. We see Steph Curry is like the perfect example. When I think of a one motion shot, I think of Steph Curry. And some of the reasons for that is because the speed. The big pro that comes to a one motion shot is literally speed is the first thing that I think of. You're able to get the ball off a hell of a lot quicker. If the ball is moving in this transition from the shooting pocket straight through to your release in one sort of fluid motion, you're able to maximize your shot in its speed, in getting it off really quickly. So you'll see a lot of the time when you see people shooting in that one motion, a lot of it is about getting it off really quickly. The other thing is it's a really synergetic motion. Now, what do I mean by that? Everything is connected. When you're shooting your shot, your legs are then connecting through that motion from your legs, connect in with your hip, which then connect into your set point, which then connect into your release. Now, when we look at some of the two motion shooting mechanics, there's pauses or it's elongated. Now, when we see that motion, it's all fluid. You're able to transfer the energy from the ball, from the floor, you pushing into the floor to pushing the ball out, a lot more fluid. It works a lot smoother, which is a lot of the reason why people are able to get the shot off a lot quicker. But the motion is allowing them to shoot from greater distances because they're not putting themselves under so much straining, having to jump and then sort of catapult the ball out, which is what we used to see in people who, what we see a lot more in people who use a two motion shot. The other thing that I would say is a big pro when it comes to one motion shooting is that you're not required to exert a lot of energy. When you see guys who shoot one motion shots, a perfect example of this I would say is LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball's jump is very, very short. It's very low to the ground. It's almost like a hop. Because of the fact that the motion allows him to really elongate the energy of the ball or elongate his body to catapult the ball forward. He doesn't have to rely on everything being generated from his forearm. It's being generated from his legs to his hips, through to his arms and propelling the ball forward. So it allows you to conserve a lot more energy when you're shooting. Now, a couple of things that we need to be aware of that I guess you could consider as cons associated to the one motion shot. And the first one that comes to mind is spatial recognition. Now, obviously in any sort of shooting motion, you should be aware and you should have a really good understanding of how much distance you have between you and the defender and how much you need to be able to get your shot off. But traditionally, when we think of one motion shooting, a lot of the time, not all the time, a lot of the time, the ball is transitioning away from their body a lot more because of that movement, and it's a little bit more lofty. Now, because of the fact that they're able to get it up really quick, they don't need as much space. However, if you see guys crowd those shooters, they generally have to rely on things like step back motions to be able to give them the space to sort of propel that ball. But because of the speed, sometimes it can be, you don't need as much space to be able to get it up, but you have to be super, super aware, because as soon as that ball motion comes up, if you're used to doing it in one fluid motion, any sort of moment of adjustment can really make the shot really hard to get off. Now, speaking of motions, the shooting motion, because of the fluidity associated to the shot, it becomes a little bit more uncomfortable and herky-jerky when you're shooting it in this one motion shot. Now, for me, I find when I'm shooting in a one motion action, I don't have as much of an issue in shooting it from my middle or shooting it from my short side or my close side. It's when I'm shooting my opposite side where it's gonna go across. And because of this motion, it naturally, organically feels like you're shooting across your body, and so the ball propels across, which is why that you would see when you see Lonzo Ball, when he was shooting with that old style mechanic, it was actually turning his shooting shoulder towards the rim as opposed to his shoulders. Both of his shoulders being squared to the rim. He was leading with one shoulder because he was using that as his guide. Okay, so makes it a little bit more difficult when you're in certain positions in being able to get the ball off. But as I mentioned before, because of the speed, you just have to get the ball to that set point or to that shooter's pocket to allow you to get the ball off. So that's why you can see guys like Steph Curry literally just transition the ball, do some sort of a, perfect example is the Curry slide. He does the Curry slide, the ball gets to his inside hip, and it's right where he wants to shoot, and he can bang, just release that ball super, super quickly. So it can be a little bit more uncomfortable to be able to get the ball to other positions, but as a defender, I just really want to do my job to stop you from getting the ball to that position. That then obviously opens up a number of different things, and I'm obviously just focusing from it on a shooting perspective, but it's one of the things that we have to consider. Makes it a little bit uncomfortable to shoot from certain positions because you basically have to get the ball there, whereas in a two motion shot, it's generally not as big of an issue. The next thing that I want to talk about in regards to being a con for one motion shooting is post work. You generally I don't think I've ever seen someone shoot a one motion shot from the post. The reason for this is if you have your back to the basket, you're going to be turning and transitioning the ball, and there is naturally going to be a slight pause. So shooting from the post is really going to be a lot harder because you don't have as much vision of the ring, and it's a lot more of a prayer, I would say. The one motion shot is definitely a squared up shot. You do have to have your feet really set. Generally, if someone's got really lopsided footwork, they're unbalanced, because of the fundamental grounding in the one motion shot, everything transitioning from their feet, if they're off balance, the shot's going to be off balance, and it's one motion. It's super, super fluid. So Trae Young, perfect example. When you see he's got great balance, when you see Steph Curry, great balance, great footwork balance, they get on balance, boom, they let that shot fly. If they don't have great balance, it's where the shots aren't as good as what they could be. And these guys are really great shooters, so it's probably not as big of an issue for the average Joe like us, but it's something that does make it really difficult. Post moves, one motion shots, really not existent. Now, in regards to one motion shooting, there's one little detail that I just really want to emphasize as well. I'm talking a lot from the perspective of the arms and how the arms are this fluidity from the shooting pocket to the set point. But there's another thing that I really want to sort of talk about as well, and that's the timing of the legs, as well as the timing of the release. Now, when you'll see some of the close-ups and slow-mos that I've got that are associated to this shooting action, you'll generally see as well that the release is happening at the same time as the jump. So it's like the jump is happening and the push and everything is sort of happening in one fluid motion. And you'll see that especially when you look at guys like LaMelo Ball and you look at Steph Curry, 1000%, you'll see that sort of motion where as they're jumping, this arm movement's going. Whereas when we look at guys like Ray Allen or we look at guys like Kobe Bryant, when they're doing that two motion jump shot action, which is their form of shooting in the way that they shoot, and traditionally it's been a very common sort of format and in the way that people would shoot, they would jump as they reach their peak, then they're transitioning from their set point to their release. So something really key that I just wanted to emphasize, I just really wanted to make sure that I call out the fact of the timing in when that release is happening in conjunction with their jump, like so with the timing with their jumping. Now, when we start to think about the two motion shot, a couple of key pros that jump out is really the consistency of the shot. It doesn't really matter where the ball is, you have much more versatility to be able to get the ball to your set point. If your set point is, say, right in your third eye, right in the middle of your forehead, the ball can be any sort of location where your body is. As long as you get the ball to this part, you're pretty much able to have that consistent point. It doesn't really matter where the ball is, you can then transition it, get it to that set point and get it off. Whereas a one motion shot, it's a lot harder because your shooting pocket and your set point is, the line is blurred and it's a little bit more harder to be able to make that really fluid in difficult shooting scenarios. Now, when we also think about the two motion shot, the other thing is that you've got a lot more time looking at the ring. Now, when you're being defended, you're trying to just get a visual of the ring. And if you've got that two motion shot, you're giving yourself that extra moment to really maximize your total time focusing on the ring and give you a better visibility of the shot's potential. You want to get the ball in the hoop, and you need to have good visibility on the ring. Now, you can obviously change that and challenge that by really minimizing the amount of visuals that you have. A perfect example of someone who did that would be Gilbert Arenas. There's a very classic scenario where he's spoken in previous, where he used to literally take a cutout of his hand, put a hat on, and it would cover his face and he would minimize the visibility of his shot. But that guy was a weapon. That's why, to me, he's one of the greatest of all time when it comes to shooters. But you have much more visibility in regards to being able to jump up, get the ball to your set point, have visibility of the hoop, release, snap your shot. It's just generally a little bit easier in having that visibility. Now, the other thing that I really want to, focus on is, I mentioned before the diversity of movement that you have in regards to getting the ball to the set point. It's really also about consistency. The key motion in your shot for a two motion shot is that last part. Everything else matters really not as much as that last part, which is the moment from your set point going out. Now, obviously your set point could be in different positions, but in having that shot come to that set point and then transition forward, it allows for much more consistency, which makes you a lot more of a deadlier shooter from different positions. Doesn't matter if you're in the post, you can do your little shimmy work, transition, get the ball to the set point, bang, get the shot off. You're balanced, you're able to balance off in the air a lot more, you're able to use a lot more maneuvers. As long as you can get the ball to that set point, you can fire it off. As opposed to a one motion shot where, at least in my experience, the ball has to get to your shooter's pocket to then transition into your shot. That's the most critical component of the one motion shot, getting the ball to your shooter's pocket, as opposed to the two motion shot, trying to get the ball to your set point. Now, the downsides. Downsides of a two motion shot is obviously speed. It takes a lot longer for you to fire your shot off, and that's really not great when it comes to dealing with a really good defender. If a really good defender is able to crowd you and you don't have the benefit of length or distance in being able to recognize and have really good sharp recognition of the distance that you have between you and the defender, getting your shot off, because it takes a lot longer, it's a lot harder to make the most out of that shot. Now, as well, from a defensive point of view, it makes your shot a lot more predictable because of the fact that your shot is relied upon in getting the ball to that set point. At the end of the day, my job as a defender is to try and limit the amount of time that you have the ball getting from where it is to your set point. And that can really just make my life a lot easier, but it makes your shot a lot more predictable. Now, obviously, we're only talking about the shooting motion. You have dribble moves, you have passing moves, you've got a bunch of different things that are taking place around that. It's not just the action of shooting, but it can make the shot a little bit more predictable when it comes to a defender trying to stop it. Now, the very last thing that I do want to talk about when it comes to the con of a two motion shot is it adds more mechanics. And generally, when you have more mechanics, you have more opportunity for things to go wrong. Because of the fact that there is not as much fluidity that is associated to your shot, there is a lot more reliance on all of the mechanics coming together. Perfect example is when a shot starts to stop dropping. If the shot's not sinking, as shooters, our job is to try and recognize what is happening, what can we do to adjust it. Sometimes it's not your night and you just have to have shooter's amnesia. Just shoot up good quality shots, not jack up crap. But you have to get the good quality shots up and you have to understand what is happening. Is the ball drifting? That's possibly due to my flick. Is it not getting enough distance? That's possibly due to my legs. I'm not jumping enough. With a one motion shot, it's much more consistent because that motion is all fluid. And so it generally has a little bit more comfort. As long as you're keeping that consistency in your release, you're not trying to push the ball too far. It's just generally a lot more about where your arm positioning is for the finish, for the snap of your wrist. It makes it a little bit easier. Now, when we're talking about a two motion shot, there's a lot more, things that you have to be concerned about. First thing that I think about is legs. If you have a two motion shot and you're not getting that distance, you have to jump a lot more, which means that you're using a lot more energy to try and get that shot off. So that's something that you have to be focused about. The ball is getting to that set point and you're releasing. If you're tired, that shot isn't going to be as consistent. It's also taking a lot more time for you to get it off. So there's just a lot of things that you have to think about and a lot more things that you have to break down in regards to you shooting your shot and how consistent you're able to get that motion up. So a lot more mechanics means a lot more things can go wrong. It's just really the nature of the shot. Before I go through and wrap up today's video, the big thing that I do want to stress is that I don't necessarily believe that one shot is truly better than the other. In fact, I would say that my shot is probably my organic shot is somewhere in between the two. But I really wanted to spend a good amount of time trying to walk through this because I find that there is benefit in understanding the difference between the two shots, and especially for younger people. When if you're younger and you're watching this video, the one motion shot is something you'll probably organically be doing if you're trying to shoot threes, all right? Or if you're trying to shoot and you don't have that strength. Whenever you see one motion shots, you see little kids shoot, they're literally doing everything they can to yank that shot out. A lot of it is that. And so if you understand that what you're doing and you're using a one motion shot because maybe you don't have the strength yet to shoot those long distance shots or to shoot accurately, you just want to get better, I think you should understand what you're doing and also why you're doing it. Understanding what you're doing is one piece of the puzzle, but understanding why and how you should use it is really, really key. And doing these types of videos for CT's Classroom is all about getting better. I know for me, I'm addicted to the details. I really get bogged down with a lot of details and try to understand everything that goes into the action that I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to do, all the little actions, so that I can do it to the best of my abilities. And the only way is by educating yourself. And that's what this series is all about. On that note, if you guys are enjoying the content that I'm putting here together for CT's Classroom and you want to see more of it, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. It definitely does help. If there's a particular type of aspect that you'd like me to focus on, you can go ahead and you can either send me an email. I've got my email at the very end. Hit me up on my socials, or you can always just leave a comment and let me know if there's something that you want me to try and explain and work through. All right, guys. Thank you so much for sitting in with me today. Until next time, take care, be safe. Peace.